edit in, mate. Better? Oh, we stuck his way out. You alright, Jordan?
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and we are back again with the Lotus Esprit. A bit sooner than I thought because I've just wanted to crack on with this car, and from my last update, even though it was a bit of a almost finished on a negative tone with being a bit stuck, I did manage to free off the bits I was stuck on in the end. So the steering column, I showed a clip of that at the end of my last video. Used the hammer to get that off in the end, and then the pedal box, the final bolts actually sheared on me. So I'm unstuck for now. Those sheared off bolts might cause a problem later trying to get them out of the chassis there, but at least I'm sort of unblocked for the moment. What I have done just a minute ago is take off an earth strap just in the engine bay there, and also remove the throttle cable from the carburetors. Just a couple of things that needed to be done before attempting to lift the body off. So I'm at that point now where I'm going to try and undo all of the big bolts. There's probably about 10 of them or so that fix the body to the chassis, and then it's time to lift it off. So wish me luck. Starting at the back of the car, I began to loosen the 3 bolts in the rear section. After these spanned round continuously, I realised that the nuts weren't captive in the chassis and actually needed a spanner on the other side to loosen them. This is where I had to adopt a Lotus yoga position to be able to take out the bolts. It's something that I'd have to repeat for the other bolts connecting the chassis to the body. Moving inside the cabin, there was one bolt by the seatbelt anchor, which came out relatively easily. Then another bolt a bit further forward, which sheared on this side. There are 2 further bolts in the front bulkhead. These were particularly tough because the nut on the other side was buried deep in the front suspension, and this one I actually needed to use my foot to turn it. It became so stiff, which eventually ended up with the bolt shearing. Moving to the front compartment, there were 2 further bolts. One I'd previously removed when taking out the wiring loom, since loads of earth wires were connected to it, but the bolt on the other side came out relatively easily, even though I had to adopt another complicated body position to take it out. I actually thought I was done at this point, as I've been using the Lotus manual to see where the bolts were connecting the chassis to the body, labelled with triangles, but what it fails to mention is that there are further bolts on the rear bulkhead, which were hidden behind some carpet in my car. With a final bit of Lotus yoga, I was able to get these last bolts out. So I finally got those bolts out of the car yesterday, which means the body is finally free to move off of the chassis. So just to check that, last night I used a couple of jacks and some blocks of wood to move the body up slightly, just to make sure everything's freed off. There were a few things that still needed to be done. So the coil, which is mounted to the body, still had a wire and the high tension lead attached to the engine, so I just had to take those off. The heater hoses also still connect the body to the chassis, so I need to poke those through the bulkhead. And lastly, there are 2 holes in the footwells, one on each side, where part of the front suspension intrudes into the body. And what you need to do is when you lift it up, you need to sort of manhandle either the chassis forward or the body backwards, just so those bolts don't snag on the fiberglass as you lift it up. So what I also learnt was that trying to do it on my own was a bit dangerous, and it was quite precarious when the body had been lifted, that it tried to sort of tilt and wobble, probably because I've still got the windscreen in, which makes it a slightly unbalanced load. So what I need to do is wait for some strong people to come and give me a hand either this weekend or soon, where we can hopefully safely take the body off, and then I'll be able to have a look at the chassis. So let's see what happens. Here we are then, introducing Jordan and Brett, aka my sister's boyfriend and his brother. They run a local strongman competition, so they're just the fellas for this kind of job. We had a couple of false starts, including the fuel pump, which is still attached to the body and still connected to the engine, which needed to be removed. That didn't take too long, but we did also have a bit of a scare when we nearly dropped the whole body on Jordan's head, but no damage done. I do recommend more than 3 people for this job. Once everything was freed off, these guys made it look like a piece of cake, and the body was finally separated from the chassis. So with that job done, it was time for a well-earned beer, so I'll leave you with some shots of the chassis and body disconnected. Next time I'll have a look at it in a bit more detail, and maybe even try and take some more bits off the chassis. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.